My name is Tara. I'm sitting in my new apartment, looking out the window at the city below. It's been a few months since everything fell apart, and I'm finally starting to feel like I can breathe again. But the memories still haunt me, and sometimes, I find myself wondering how I could have been so blind. It all started a few weeks ago when my fiancé, Leo, came home from work one evening. I was on the couch, finishing up a project for my job in graphic design. I remember looking up and seeing the expression on his face. It was a look I'd never seen before, a mix of guilt and sadness. "Tara," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." My heart sank. I knew what was coming. I'd been feeling the distance between us for a while, but I'd been hoping it was just a phase. I closed my laptop and sat up, waiting for him to continue. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his eyes fixed on the floor. "I'm in love with someone else." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the blood drain from my face, and my hands started to shake. I stared at him in disbelief, trying to process what he was saying. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Isla," he said, his voice breaking. "My best friend from college." Isla. The name felt like a knife in my heart. I'd known Isla since we were in college, and we'd been close friends for years. I'd trusted her, confided in her, and she'd betrayed me. "How long?" I asked, my voice cold and calm. "4 months," he said, his head hanging in shame. "I'm so sorry, Tara. I never meant for this to happen." I felt a wave of anger wash over me. 4 months. He'd been lying to me, sleeping with her, and planning our future at the same time. I stood up, my hands balled into fists. "You're a coward," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You could have just told me the truth. Instead, you let me believe in a future that never existed." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. "I know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry." I turned away from him, unable to look at him any longer. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice panicked. "I'm going to my sister's," I said, my voice cold and firm. "I can't be here right now." I walked out the door, slamming it behind me. I felt the tears streaming down my face, but I didn't care. I was too angry, too hurt to care. I drove to my sister's house in a daze. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I'd been so happy, so in love, and now it was all gone. I pulled into the driveway and sat in the car for a few minutes, trying to calm myself down. My sister, Ava, opened the door when she saw me. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. "What happened?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I told her everything, from the moment Leo came home to the moment I walked out the door. She listened quietly, her arms wrapped around me, offering me comfort and support. "I'm so sorry, Tara," she said, her voice soft and soothing. "You don't deserve this." I spent the next few days at my sister's house, trying to come to terms with what had happened. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I couldn't stop thinking about Leo and Isla. I felt like my world had been turned upside down, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. One night, I couldn't sleep, so I decided to look through Leo's laptop. I knew it was a violation of his privacy, but I needed to know the truth. I logged into his cloud account and found a folder titled Travel Ideas. When I opened the folder, I found a series of messages between Leo and Isla. They were filled with love, passion, and betrayal. I read through the messages, my heart breaking with each word. They had been planning a future together, talking about getting married, having kids, and starting a life together. They had been laughing at me, mocking me, and making fun of me behind my back. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I closed the laptop and sat there, staring at the wall. I felt like I was in a nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. The next day, I decided to confront Isla. I called her and asked her to meet me at a coffee shop. she agreed, and I drove to the coffee shop, my heart pounding in my chest. When I saw her, I felt a wave of anger wash over me. She looked beautiful, as always, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. Isla, I said, my voice cold and firm. I know about you and Leo. She looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. How? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I showed her the messages on my phone. She looked at them, her face turning pale. I'm so sorry, Tara, she said, her voice filled with regret. I never meant for this to happen. I looked at her, my eyes filled with hatred. You're a liar, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You knew what you were doing, and you did it anyway. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. I know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm so sorry. I stood up, my hands balled into fists. Get out of my life, I said, my voice cold and firm. I never want to see you again. She stood up, her eyes filled with tears. Please, Tara, she said, her voice pleading. Let me make it up to you. I looked at her, my eyes filled with disgust. There's nothing you can do to make this right, I said, my voice cold and firm. You've destroyed my life, and I'll never forgive you. I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving her standing there, alone and broken. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but I also felt a deep sense of sadness and loss. Over the next few weeks, the fallout from the affair continued. Leo tried to contact me, but I refused to answer his calls or texts. Isla also tried to contact me, but I blocked her number. I didn't want to have anything to do with either of them. My sister, Ava, stayed with me during this difficult time, offering me support and encouragement. She helped me to see that I was stronger than I thought, and that I could get through this. I also started to focus on my work. I threw myself into my projects, using my creativity and talent to express my feelings. It helped me to feel better, and it gave me a sense of purpose. A few weeks later, I met up with Leo's friend, Jake. He told me that Leo and Isla had broken up. Apparently, their relationship had been based on lies and deception, and it couldn't survive the truth. I felt a sense of satisfaction when I heard this. I knew that they deserved each other, and I was glad that they were no longer together. Over the next few months, I continued to heal. I moved into my own apartment, and I started to make new friends. I also started to date again, but I was more cautious this time. I didn't want to get hurt again. One day, I ran into Leo at a coffee shop. We made eye contact, and he opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but I walked past him like he didn't exist. He didn't follow me, and he didn't call out to me. It felt good to finally be free of him. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized that it was a blessing in disguise. It taught me a valuable lesson about trust, betrayal, and forgiveness. It also taught me that I'm stronger than I thought, and that I can overcome anything. I'm still not sure if I'll ever be able to trust someone again, but I'm willing to give it a try. I know that there are good people out there, and I'm looking forward to finding someone who will love and respect me for who I am. Life is strange like that. You think you know someone, then one day they look you in the eye and tell you they love your best friend, and you realize maybe you never knew them at all. But you move on anyway, and some days, that's all you can do.